So I'm just gonna open this video with the fact that this is why I wear hats. Okay, so now we'll spare you from this. Cool! Awesome. Real profesh. So, this is a Fairweather update. We have a lot of things that are happening. Lots of excitement. Okay, so first things first is that I got my corset. I got my costumes. Oh my god, I got my costumes. What I have here in my hands is my 2-day dresses and my bridesmaid's gown, because I have been chosen to be a bridesmaid. And then, I have my undergarments coming in the mail this week, so they should be here by Friday. And it's like, for once, I think I might have everything at least 2 to 3 weeks before the LARP, which is always really nice, because, I mean, as much as I plan ahead, and I usually start costuming and designing stuff 4 to 5 months ahead if I know my role, every time, even though I do, and I work on patterns and I work on designs, it always seems to be that they come in like the last month, or like 3 or 2 days before the LARP. But for once I think I'll have the satisfaction of having everything beforehand. So, yes. I'm not showing you guys my outfits yet. Sorry, I know. But I will show you my corset tonight. And then I want to talk about some other things. So, I've started to pick up on my relations. So, when you go to Fairweather, normally you have, again, like I referenced in the other video, you have a few families to choose from. I only mentioned a few, but there's a good chunk. There's like the Belgians, there's the Irish, of course the Fairweathers, the Americans, the Russians, the French. There's like 6 or 7 families I think you get to choose from, and then you could be like a local, or you could be an artist, or like an expert. So an expert or an artist is like somebody who's an expert at fencing, and you can play a character that can teach that, or you could be an artist or an opera singer or an actress. There's a lot of options there. So I'm playing, I think I said last time, I'm playing Helena Fitzgerald of the Irish family. I'm the first daughter to the Irish family. So I think, even though I said in the last update I wasn't going to spoil my character to you guys, I think I'm actually going to go into who she is, because I've had actually a lot of people ask me questions about that and want me to tell a little bit more detail. So Fairweather has a group called Fairweather Manor 4 overall. Then there's Fairweather Manor looking for relations. So if you're part of Fairweather Manor 4 and you want to get relations, you go to that group. And then there's even more like special groups. So there's Fairweather Manor old, young, adult. So that means, you know, characters that are of those age groups can then be in there and maybe make possible more relations, or can have an attitude, like a synchronized attitude between all of them, like, oh, all the old people are crotchety and mean, or all the young people are really jaded by the war. It could be something like that. And then you have more groups of like, for like the family. So you have, you know, Fairweather Manor 4, the Irish, and then that's obviously where all the Irish people for the family go. And then you have like the Russians and the Americans, and then you have ones for the experts, and yada 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 yada. There's 50 million groups. So I'm gonna read you essentially my post in the Fairweather Relations group. I was one of the first people to post to the Relations group, so I'm still fishing for some things, but this is the kind of group where you post what you want out of the game and what relations you're specifically looking for this character, or things you'd like to play up on, because some of these characters are reoccurring, meaning that throughout all the Fairweather Manors there have been, like again, this is the 4th one, there are people who have played a character before. Like, for instance, I do believe that, Alexander Fitzgerald, I think, existed in Fairweather 3, and somebody's played him, and now he's in Fairweather 4. So it's not, the games are not sequels to each other, but sometimes they're in a similar universe, or there could be some characters that have sequel potential between the games, but it really varies. It also varies between who's playing them. What I did, and what I recommend that you do if you're making a relations post, is that you talk about your character and then what you want for the game, and usually you get a lot of responses if you have a picture, because it gives people a better idea of what you look like and what to expect. This is my post. Lady Helena Fitzgerald. She's a young noblewoman. She's about 26 years old, and her key words are charming, empathetic, imaginative, fanciful, and restless. And this is a direct quote from the two-line summary that they give you when you get to choose your characters. The eldest daughter, Helena, is a hopeless romantic and lives more in a land of fairies than in the real world. Beautiful and otherworldly, she has attracted many suitors, but so far has refused every single one of them. Instantly likable with a natural charm that is quite difficult to define, Helena has no problem fitting into any social circle, and she is happy to talk with anyone on any subject. Helena is known for being quite wrapped up in her fanciful stories of fairies, almost annoyingly so to her parents that wish for her to put away her childish things. Helena has a very positive, if not somewhat unrealistically optimistic way of approaching life, seeing many things through rose-colored lenses. She's slightly traditional in her general, but is yet not opposed to more modern thinking, but will keep things to herself depending on the audience, so she definitely knows how to act for who she's hanging out with. After the death of her oldest and most beloved brother, Harry, she has become more withdrawn when alone and not at parties. Some hear that she sings to herself, or perhaps even talks to herself alone. So, there is a little bit something to that there, but I know that there's some people that are watching this, so I don't want to spoil everything. It's no secret to anyone that her parents are quite afraid she's becoming of spinsterish age, and are quite desperate to see Helena married. But Helena is quite sure she must find her Prince Charming. So, a spinster, that's a term for like a childless, unhappy old lady. Now, spinster also back then was used as a term for any unmarried lady basically over 25. Like, back then, if you were over, like, 22, you were getting into the red zone for, like, being unmarriageable. Like, by the time you hit, like, 28 or 30, that was it. Like, you were considered unmarriable. Like, you're gonna be alone and have no babies for your life. Which, hey, some people liked and some ladies wanted back then, but it was seen as, like, socially, like, ugh. Like, oh my god, you're unmarried and you don't have kids? And you're only 21? How dare you? So, Helena's also kind of hell-bent on getting a Prince Charming. Now, again, I think we just discussed how she has unrealistic expectations, so she kind of has her head in the clouds and a little bit in dreamland, and maybe has unrealistic expectations for romance due to fairy tales. Helena rather have a charming gentleman that can sweep her off her feet, or none at all. Her mother and father feel quite strongly otherwise. Helena is an excellent target for matchmaking characters. There are certain characters who's, like, when you, read about them and things that they are, it will say that they like to matchmake people. And that would mean, you know, sometimes it's servants, sometimes it's artists, sometimes it's parents. And if a character does like to matchmake, then, you know, if I want to, I can go to them and hopefully find my Prince Charming. So Helena does have a little bit of a streak where, like, she likes to irk and, like, poke fun at her parents and, like, irritate them by flirting with unsavory gentlemen. An unsavory gentleman could mean somebody from the downstairs, which is a servant. It can mean, unfortunately, one of the Americans are seen as undesirable men, or an expert or an artist. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. As a bridesmaid, Helena is likely to be very busy. If you ever want to plan something with or for the bride, let me know. So again, I've been chosen to be a bridesmaid, which I'm very honored for. So Lady Amanda is going to be married, and, you know, since we're technically second cousins, she's chosen me to be her bridesmaid. Though I'm not her maid of honor, that goes to her sister. Helena is quite intelligent and great with conversation, often finding herself the life of the party and being able to mingle in every circle with everyone, even talking with stubborn men about male topics only on their minds. Most people tend to like Helena, and she always goes out of her way to help someone in need, even a servant. So that means just the good of her heart. Helena must be noble and act like those she's written about in her fairy tales. And how about a servant? Or anybody who needs help. She's quite creative and loves to draw and try new things, always on her feet and thinking. Any expert, Helena would likely love to learn your trade. And then, of course, I say, let's do something. And then I have a little picture, which, oh, it's not gonna focus. There we go. I'll probably post it here so you guys can see it. And that is, well, that's Helena. So I'm gonna play her a little bit fanciful, fun, So with that, to kind of develop the character more and get a better feel of how you want to play them, most families tend to like to write correspondence to each other before the game. So meaning like, for instance, my mother, our characters are supposed to be written as very close, which means that, you know, we would travel together. So let's say she didn't take me on a travel with her, that means she'll probably end up sending me a postcard. So I have like pre-written postcards from when my character was like 13, 14, 15 from my mother, and I can respond to them as such to kind of build up the dynamic of the relationship beforehand. So we've all started writing correspondence together, and I'm going to show you some of the gems of which I have written. So I kind of approach this as, well, if we're a realistic family, right? Even as kids, with, you know, older brother, and she's the older sister, she has 2 younger brothers and a younger sister, there's gonna be some conflict, okay? There's gonna be some pranks. It's impossible. They are human beings. So, I figured, what could I write? So I approached a lot of these as Helena writing them when she was younger, meaning writing them when she was maybe, like, you know, 13, 12, 15 years old to her brothers and sisters or her parents. Okay, so this is a response that Lady Helena Fitzgerald wrote to her mother, Georgina. And she wrote me a postcard that essentially was like, you better be good, and if you're practicing your French well and doing a good job and not being a hardhead with anybody, I will buy you a pretty dress from Paris, which is where she was. And so she responds, Helena, my dear, she's maybe about 18 years old, 17 years old when she writes this letter. Mother, I am so very happy to hear that you're having a lovely time in Brussels, and I hope France is just as lovely for you. I will have you know, Mother, that I've been expertly practicing my French. And then I wrote something in French, which I can't actually speak French, and I believe it was more like, see, Mother, I have been practicing my French. Look how flawlessly I write this sentence. Now, can I please have a dress for when you come back? You know how much I enjoy my fantasy tales, Mother. I couldn't possibly stop. I just wrote this tale starring Harry, her older brother. He loves it so much, I've convinced him and Lawrence to put on a show with me for old time's sake in the parlor tomorrow. It's nice to see Harry still a child at heart, no? But I do understand I have to act like quite the lady, and would you ever expect different? I always keep my promises to you, Mother. Have fun in Paris, and remember my favorite color is sage green. With love, Helena. The rest of these are kind of notes that Helena has written to your family. So back then, instead of like texting each other or whatnot, like if a sibling, you had a question to ask a sibling, they weren't there, you were waiting for them to come back, you would likely probably write a note and leave it on their bed or on their desk or something. So I imagine that when Alexander was 10 years old, meaning Helena was probably around like 16, because they're about maybe 5-6 years apart. I imagine that there was a scenario that Alexander stole his older sister's favorite shoes and hid them from her, and eventually Helena finds them under the couch, and this is her response to that. I know you hid my shoes, you little ogre. Expect a fish in your bed this week. So the joke behind that is because, fish stink. And then this is a note to Lawrence, who's age 14, so she would probably be around 17, 18 years old writing this. Lawrence, please! I really need you to watch this new play me and Harry are putting on. Alexander absolutely refuses to do so. It would mean a lot to your big sister. I'll even give you a role in the next one. I promise. And now this one is when Helena was age 12, and she's writing to her father, who was a very stern man. Father, I certainly didn't mean to make fun of Lawrence. It was Harry's idea. I don't think I should be sent to bed without pudding, dessert here for the Americans, since it was mostly Harry's fault to begin with. So I tried to make, like, I'm writing a few more, but I was trying to make it, you know, a little bit more personable, to give a dynamic between the siblings, to make it fun. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, their brothers and sisters are going to end up fighting and, like, playing pranks on each other. Who wouldn't? I have started up a tie with my good friend Peter. So Peter is actually the guy that I mentioned in the first update video and like the first vlog. And so Peter is playing this character named Jean-Pierre. And Jean-Pierre is an artist, and he is a womanizing louche and rake. So both of those words mean a man who uses his charm against women to womanize, essentially. So I'm pretty excited. He's going to be playing a witty, absolutely scandalous scoundrel. And we have been setting correspondence to each other, of course. Now, essentially, the way that this happened is that, so my mother in the game wanted to get a painting done of the house, and of course, she's going to hire Jean-Pierre. Now, this is an idea where, now this player has interaction with our entire family. So the idea is to kind of play to each other. You know, if you want to know another family, you guys can all set up a reason for that. So Jean-Pierre spent a few days at our estate, and when he was there, during dinner, he maybe stared just a little too long at Helena, just enough to kind of piss off her mom, and so her mother quickly and unapologetically rearranged the table seating for the next day when they had dinner, and he was never to be sat across from her or near her again. So they ended up sitting on the same side of the table so he couldn't look at her. Helena, a few days after that, receives a letter. And it goes as such. Sweet, magical Helena, I realize I am not supposed to write you, and certainly not so soon after I left. But I felt I had to, if not for my own sanity, but for the sake of my art. As I am sitting here in my rented room in Cardiff, I find myself unable to lift my hand to that blank and empty canvas. Instead of breathtaking inspiration, my mind is filled with bitter regret that I did not share more words with you. So please, fair Helena, write me as soon as you can. Free me from my turmoil. For if not for my sake, but the sake of your mother. For if you do not save me, I cannot see how I will ever finish the painting she ordered. Besides, your mother is cross with me as it is, and adding failure to deliver the ordered painting, well, that might just be too much, even for me to handle. Affectionately, Jean-Pierre. So of course, Helena gets this letter, and she's shocked, and of course she couldn't deny a gentleman in help, no matter how brash he's being about it. But if she couldn't be responsible for a man to lose his livelihood, so she responds, Jean-Pierre, I can see how that would be quite the unfortunate situation for you. I, of course, cannot deny someone help who is in need. You would be quite right that my mother would be very unhappy with an unfinished, or not even yet begun, painting. So here I do reply with jovial correspondence. I think you made quite the impression during your arrival. Never have I seen my mother so swift in rearranging table maps. I do hope I can inspire you with great and moving enthusiasm. I am too an artist of a written sort, so I understand how such a lack of inspiration could be crippling. I do hope this letter finds you well, as I had to hand it to my favorite lady's maid. Otherwise, I'm sure my brothers would have caught it and torn up the bloody thing. Paint well, Lady Fitzgerald. So her brothers in the lore that we're creating, of course, are very protective over Helena, both of her younger brothers, and so particularly her brother Lawrence doesn't want her corresponding with this absolute scoundrel. So he's been ripping up her letters every time she tries to send it in the mail, to the point where she got so pissed she just gave it to her lady's maid and was like, listen, I need you to do this because Lawrence keeps ripping up my letters. So she hands it to the lady's maid to mail. And a little while later, she gets a response. My heroine, you have with ink and a simple stroke of your slender wrist saved me from forever giving up the brush. With a simple letter, you have given me back my urge to create. Though I have to confess, my mind is hardly filled with images of some old house. I am at least glad I can paint again, as I am afraid I would have been a horrible banker or trader. It is captivating to meet someone who so aptly lives up to their name, fair Helena. A name and a face that would set sail 1,000 ships. Sadly, I do not have any ships, and hardly any crown or armies to my name. So perhaps, instead, you would let me paint you? It is, after all, the least I could do, after you restored my livelihood to me. Affectionately, a man wishing he would have been named Paris. And so, she responds. Jean-Pierre, I'm certainly glad my letter found you in good spirits. I must apologize for my inappropriate manner of speaking in my last correspondence. It seems someone here in the Fitzgerald household does not want me to respond to your letters. I am quite flattered by your words, Jean-Pierre. Never before have I been likened to Helen of Troy. Quite the compliment. Though I don't truly believe I am the envy of gods, the sentiment is much appreciated. I am honored by your request to be your subject, but I do not believe it would be appropriate for me to oblige. I do thank you for the admirable consideration. Yours, Lady Fitzgerald. So she said nah. She said nah, man. She said nah. And, of course, the response. Fair Helena. Your refusal then forced my hand, Helena. If I do not put my daydreams onto paper or canvas, I'm afraid I will never be able to focus on anything else but the notion of making you smile or blush. Instead, you compel me to draw you from memory. And while my thoughts of you are vivid and clear, they will hardly do you justice. And you do not need to worry about offending or hurting me with any words that your hands can put to paper. Except, perhaps, if you would write a solemn promise that we would never see each other again. But I am certain we will meet each other again, and even if though I do not believe in the notion of God, I do believe in the notion that things happen if you want them hard enough. What do you believe in, Helena? The tormented Jean-Pierre. So, of course, it's been pretty spicy. So right now what we've been thinking is we're getting Lawrence, the player of Lawrence, involved, who has now intercepted that last letter and pretended to be Helena and has written back. And it is essentially, he masqueraded as Helena, saying, well, I do appreciate your feelings. Nah. How about nah? So it's gonna be really interesting. So we're still actively kind of like writing to each other and like figuring out how we want the tide to go, because all this is pre-play to the game. So once we get to the game, we have a place to start off with relations. Now, just to preface, you do not need to do any pre-play to go and have fun at the game. There are plenty of people that don't do it or do very little of it and have a great time. I barely set up any relations so far. It's really just with Peter and of course my family, which is kind of like non-optional. But I think that once I get to game, especially being a bridesmaid, I might actually probably end up being overwhelmed. So I'm just gonna take it one step at a time. That's it for my relations so far. So next, I'm gonna show you guys the corset. Hey, so now I'm gonna show you guys my corset. Oh, by the way, this is my mermaid tail. Just you know, hanging around. So I gotta have somewhere to put it where it's, you know, inactive. Yeah, my corset's made by Jessica of Ties That Bind. Here's a thing. Very cool. So she actually, I found out about her from my friend Lucy of Lucy's Corsetry. She recommended me to her because Jessica has a really great pattern for a modernized S-bend corset. Now, I'm probably going to make a different video about corsets in general and how they work and how to size yourself, all these things, because there's a lot more to corsetry than just buying a corset and putting it on. So an S-bend corset were corsets that kind of pushed your chest forward and your butt back like this and pulled in the waist. So that's what made it an S, was because it was like that. So it wasn't necessarily the best for posture for women at the time, but I'm essentially going to recreate that effect without hurting myself. So all of my undergarments have the necessary padding in order to do so, because I'm trying to give that Gibson girl effect with the really tiny waist. And the thing with that is that, you know, women back then didn't have really tiny, crazy tiny waists that we think they did. A lot of the photos were either edited or they just had a ton of padding on to make their tops and their bottoms look bigger, because if you pad this and you pad this, this ends up looking smaller. My measurements are, I have a 36-inch hip, a 24-inch waist, and a 32-inch bust. So if we just, yeah. So that's that is my body shape. So I'm commonly a United States small to extra small, and I'm usually, the corsets that I wear tend to be 20 inches to 18 inches small. Now, 20 inches is what I usually cinch down to for comfort, and 18 is if I'm like showing off or I have a photo shoot. I'm gonna go get the corset and show it to you guys. So this is the corset. I know it doesn't look like amazing because I don't have it on yet, but the pattern that we chose was this beautiful like nude rose pattern, really pretty, and then we chose this white lace for the top, and then the whole top here and the bottom is lined with white satin. So I figured this would be like a really great kind of standard corset kind of color to wear underneath my clothes, because I didn't want to go boring and like go with white, and I didn't want to go with black because I have plenty of black corsets, and it's really beautiful. So I have it unlaced here, and I'm actually going to show you guys what this looks like laced up on me. I cannot close the corset yet because I did just receive it about 2 days ago, so I have to do what's called seasoning, and seasoning a corset is when you're kind of like breaking it in like a new pair of boots. So I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to put it on. And we clip those in. Okay, so it doesn't look so magical just yet. But then you're gonna, what I usually do is I pull my shirt down all around just so it doesn't bunch anywhere. Right, really tight. And then you're gonna make sure you move your corset, even in the back, down to where your natural waist is. So my waist is about right there. Okay, and now you're probably asking, why is your corset flaring out so much like this? This doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to, you know, get a tiny waist, why would it be so big up here? That's because when we cinch this down and close the corset and all these are flush together, that means that their waist internally is going to be 20 inches, but this and this is going to be the actual measurements of my body, because we're not trying to shrink my upper ribs or my hips, we're trying to shrink my waist, and the way to do that is, of course, make it smaller in the waist. So now we're going to tighten it. Okay guys, so this is the corset laced. Unfortunately, I'm not so good to where I can do it without a mirror. But this is all laced to where I have it comfortable right now. So clearly it's not closed. I still have about maybe 2.5 inches of a gap here. That's simply because you know, again, I just got the corset, so I'm not going to be able to close it right away. So I'm going to be wearing this quite often just to make sure that I can close it by Fairweather Manor. So, but yeah, so this is the corset. That's it. So this is what I'm going to be wearing underneath my dresses for, you know, Lady Helena Fitzgerald. And I'm going to have, of course, the necessary bust improvers. So by the time I wear all my undergarments, what I'm going to have is bloomers, a chemise, a corset cover, then a petticoat that goes around on the outside, oh, hip pads, then a petticoat, and then the dress on top. So there's a lot of layers that go into wearing stuff like this. I'm going very period accurate. Other people are not. You don't have to. It's just this time period is a true love and passion of mine. So I wanted to be able to do it personal justice, which is why I decided to go all in on the corset. So when I get my underwear, essentially, I am going to do another update and maybe put one of my dresses on. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to keep following along with my Fairweather adventures. Bye!